Hi, my name is Matt. I'm going to be doing my presentation on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Um, this is something that I think has dominated a lot of current political discourse. People talking a lot about the Israel-Hamas war, but I haven't seen too much discourse surrounding the long, long history that has led up to this. Um, Ever since the Hamas attacks on October 7th, I've been trying to educate myself a lot more on the issue, whether that's through like sources online, or just with Student Justice for Palestine, which I've tried to be an active participant of, or just other anti-Zionist groups. I think when we hear words like apartheid and genocide, which are not infrequently thrown out by anti-Zionists about this conflict, I think we do have a responsibility to look into those claims because they're pretty serious and there could be some pretty horrible things going on. So in this speech, I'm going to go over three key conflicts of the history that have preceded the Israel-Hamas war. Those are the Israeli War of Independence, or the Nakba, the Six-Day War in 1967, and the Fatah-Hamas conflict. Um, I should just say I'm not an expert on this subject by any means, nor can I summarize it in just 8 minutes. So I'm going to urge you to look into this topic more than I have given you and try and get yourself a broader view of what has been going on. So the first thing I'm looking at is the Israeli War of Independence, or it's more commonly known to anti-Zionists and Palestinians, the Nakba, which means catastrophe. We have Theodor Herzl right here. He is the founder of Zionism. Zionism is a political ideology essentially saying that Jews should have their own state and have the right to it in order to protect themselves from anti-Zionism. Um, this is something that happens in the late 19th century. It's founded, but it really starts to gain momentum after the World War II and the Holocaust, um, just because it's further proof that Jewish people need a better form of protection against anti-Semitism, at least in Zionists' eyes. A lot of Jewish people eventually immigrate to Palestine, and this leads to a lot of ethnic conflicts between the Palestinians already living there and the Jews that live there. So near the start of this, we see something called the Balfour Declaration, where Britain promises Theodor Herzl and the Zionists of the Zionist Project, they say we look favorably upon it. At the same time, during World War I, as Britain is fighting the Ottoman Empire, they say to the Arabs living in the region, we're going to give you your own Arab state so long as you help us to fight against the Ottomans. So this piece of land, Palestine, has been promised to both of these groups. And when they both eventually get there, they feel as though that both of them have been um, have been lied to in a sense. Um, Britain is trying with a lot of different compromises to alleviate the conflict between the two. Almost everything falls through. In Jewish people's eyes, they feel they have to protect themselves as much as possible from anti-Semitism. But from Arabs' eyes, there's definitely the feeling like if this is a Jewish state being made, this is my home. How is that going to accommodate for me? How is a Jewish state at all representing what I am? This is my home. You're a colonial project. Um, this explodes into a civil war when the 1947 partition plan is given out by the UN. This is rejected by both of them. It turns into a civil war from November of 1947 to May of 1948. Israel then declares independence. Britain leaves because they've had enough of this conflict, and fighting intensifies. Israel takes the land that they were promised in the 47 partition plan by the UN, plus 60% of what was promised to Palestinians. Then Egypt and Jordan, respectively, take the Gaza Strip over here and the West Bank over here. So Palestinians still do not get a state. They get less land that they were promised, and 700,000 of them are forced to leave their homes or just flee because of so much political violence against them, and are just essentially evicted. We then have the 1967 Six-Day War. Understandably, the 1948 war and the expulsion of plenty of Palestinians does not help the conflict, or nor does it make Arab nations more peaceable. A U.S. State Department memo is quoted in 1949 as saying, one of the most important problems which must be cleared up before a lasting peace can be established in Palestine is the question of more than 700,000 Arab refugees who during the Palestine conflict fled from their homes in what is now Israeli-occupied territory, which leads us to this major war. So a casus belli, or something that Israel tells to Egypt, is after they tried to block the Straits of Tiran, which is like a big trading sort of not canal, but strait that they operate through. When Egypt tries to block that, Israel says, you definitely cannot do that. If you do that, I'm going to declare war against you. Egypt still feels that they should not recognize Israel in any sense because it's occupying Palestine, so they do it again. and this leads to the war in 1967. Israel invades the Gaza Strip, but they also invade the Sinai Peninsula right here, going all the way up to the Suez Canal. Jordan and Syria get involved, and then Israel invades and takes over the West Bank, and it takes over the Golan Heights in Syria. Ultimately, Israel now occupies all of historic Palestine, plus land from Egypt, plus land from Syria. There's further doubling down from Arab nations saying we're not going to recognize Israel, especially now. They're an expansionist state. And a new wave of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are either forced to or choose to flee their homes for fear of violence. The leader of the Mossad at the time, which is like an Israeli FBI equivalent, said in reference to Gazans, I want them all to go, even if they go to the moon. So we then have the late 70s to the 2000s, marked by lots of violence, but also some pushes for peace. Palestinians gain some form of self-governance in the Palestinian National Authority. We see some political parties for Palestinians. We have Fatah, which is founded by Yasser Arafat, and they gain control of they're in control right now of the West Bank, and we have Hamas now in control of Gaza. They were founded in 1987, and their whole deal was being an Islamic fundamentalist group that took a more direct approach to opposing Israel, not trying to work with them. There's political differences between these two. Arafat, the leader of Fatah, dies in 2004, which really inflames these conflicts. Hamas wins an election in 2006, and there are attempts to make a unity government between them. They all fall through, and this just leads to a lot of factional violence between these people. It culminates into the 2007 Battle of Gaza, which leaves Hamas with de facto control of Gaza. They had more control in Gaza, and then they eventually just took full control over there, even though there's no law necessarily saying that they do. And then Fatah keeps control over the West Bank. Overall, this just we understand this to mean now that the Palestinian governance is split up, which further takes us away from possible solutions of peace, because now there's so many players involved in this conflict. And since then, there have been 600 Palestinians roughly killed in the conflict. This conflict is still ongoing, and we can now see this is a direct through line to the Israel-Hamas war. In summary, we have went over the beginning of war with the 1948 war, but not beginning of violence. The Israel's assertion of military dominance with the 1967 Six-Day War, and the Palestinian government in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and Gaza Strip split between Hamas and Fatah with the Fatah-Hamas conflict. I'm going to end this with a piece of poetry that I find especially moving about the conflict by Marwan Makul. In order for me to write poetry that isn't political, I must listen to the birds, and in order to hear the birds, the warplanes must be silent. Thank you.